Hi everyone, State Senator Kevin Witkos here with another edition of Senator Witkos' Veterans Corner. Today I'm very honored and pleased to be in the home of U.S. Navy World War II Motor Machinist 3rd Class Warren Sullivan, Sr. How are you, sir?
Very good, thank you.
Excellent. Congratulations and thank you for agreeing to being interviewed today as our Veteran of the Month. And I'd like to start off, Warren, if we may, let's take it back. You served in World War II.
That's right.
And we know that that was started over, U.S. entrance really was Pearl Harbor.
That's
started
right.
that.
Yeah.
But before that now, how old were you when you got into the service?
18.
18. And I heard a story that you tried to get in a little early and they wouldn't take you because you weren't old enough yet.
Yeah, that's right. They wouldn't. I tried to get it, but they said, no, you got to wait, sign up at the post office and get enlisted.
Okay.
So that's what I did.
So you marched down to your local post office and filled out your draft card.
That's right. Filled up the draft card, and then they called me in August of 43.
Okay, August. So we were well into
Yeah.
World War II. And why did you decide on the Navy? Or you didn't decide and they picked it for you?
No, they after I went down to New Haven, that's where they gave the physical and swore you in down there. And then they told me that I could, after I took they said, you can go whatever service you want, the Army, the Navy, the Marines, Coast Guard, whatever you want. I told them I have a brother in the Marine Corps, so I'm going in the Navy.
Little brother rivalry there? Yeah. So when you got into the Navy, what did you report for basic training?
I went to Sullivan's, Maryland. We went. Not Sullivan's, Maryland. What I was saying, that's later on. We went up to New York State. We went right from New Haven after we were sworn in.
Right.
We got on a train, Pennsylvania Railroad, and we went from there up to up through New York State to the boot camp. What was that now? Sampson, New York.
Okay. Is that I don't know where that is. Is that on
right
the
up
ocean
on the border
line?
of New York and Canada.
Oh, so it's way up.
Way up there.
Okay.
And we were up there. I stayed up there. I believe it was in December or so that we got out of there. I forget now for sure. But anyways, when I graduated from there, I had to go to Chicago, and I went to Chicago, a Navy pier in Chicago on Lake Michigan, where I took up diesel. Went through the diesel school in there, and I was there always along. So in the first part of March, I got out of there, and I got a furlough. I think it was a week's furlough.
Yeah.
And then I had to go from there to Maryland, Baltimore, where I found where I was supposed to pick up a Navy bus that took us down to Sullivan's, Maryland, which is on Chesapeake Bay, way in the southern part of Maryland. But I had a cold all the way. About a couple of days before I left Winsted to go down to Maryland, I got a terrific cold. So I had a cold pretty good, and when I got down to the railroad station in Baltimore, they have a long rail from where the train comes in on the bottom. You got to go up a long staircase to get up, and I had to carry my sea bag up, and I just about made it. I was puffing.
You sounded like you were exhausted at the time.
Yeah, I was just puffing away. So I got on the Navy bus, and I went way into the back where the long flat seat is, and I laid on the bus back there. And all of a sudden, my legs weren't working no more.
Mm-hmm.
So they carried me across to the hospital, which was across the street from there, and they set me on a bench over there. And a corpsman come in and he says to me, we think you got appendicitis. That was the last thing I heard for 9 days. I passed up and I passed out. I was in a coma for 9 days, and then after I woke up, when I woke up, I had a straitjacket on, and my other arm was tied out on a board on the bed, and I couldn't talk when I first woke up, and then
It must have
finally,
been scary for you.
eh?
Scary for you to wake up
Yeah,
in
well,
that kind of
I said,
condition.
what the heck is this? I didn't know. I didn't know nothing. And then after I'm laying there trying to, after I did wake up, the corpsman was feeding me soup. Then another corpsman come in and stuck a needle in my leg, because every half hour they were giving me penicillin and sulfur drug. And they did that. And when this guy hit me with that needle, if I wasn't tied down, I would have killed him.
That's probably why you were tied down. Now, you said they come to find out you
No, they tied me down. They tied me down, they said, because the priest came in to give me the last rites. And I jumped off the bed and threw him up onto the bunk on the other side. So that's where they tied me down and put a straitjacket on me.
Could you share the fact that they diagnosed you with spinal meningitis?
Yeah, I had spinal meningitis.
And that's why you had gone into a coma state for 9 days.
That's right.
I'm glad you're with us today. And so you came out of it and you began your
Yeah, I
duties.
came out of it. And then after I came out, they sent me up to the Bethesda Naval Hospital, which is up just beyond Washington, D.C. And that's a 20-story building. And you can only go up 19, though. I tried the elevator 3 or 4 times, but only go 19. And that's because the senators and the president and all of them have the 40th floor.
Okay. So let me ask you this. So with your training in diesel mechanics, you were destined for a ship.
Yeah.
Because they're not going to have you be a landlubber with that kind of training, I would imagine.
Right.
So what was the name of the ship that you served on?
It was LCT 1205.
The LCT 1205?
Yeah.
What kind of ship was that?
That's a landing craft tank. We're supposed to carry tanks and things like that. We had the ramp that comes down in the front, so that whatever you want can go on board.
And would that nose into the shore? And so, I imagine it has to almost be able to, the ramp would be extended onto something where...
I used to go right into the beach wherever we were, but I couldn't see where it was going. I used to be in a little room or up in the bow that had a Cummins diesel in there, and I used to let the ramp up and down. But I had another fellow, Stanley, was up on the top of the bow telling me, let it down, let it down. When I first went in, I have to start the engine up to the little diesel, and I had to bring the ramp up tight, because on the top of the ramp on each side, there's a U-bolt, and there's a big pin on each side of the deck, up on the top for the U-bolt to go over, and he can't take it off unless I bring the ramp up to take the pressure off of that. So then he'd take the bolt off, rule bolt off of that, and then he'd tell me, okay, you can let it go down.
How fast did the ramp go up and down? Just normal, regular?
It could go down. It would go by its own weight.
Okay.
Now you could let it go down faster, but I used to let it go down slow because we didn't want to break any of the chains or cables that were on that thing. So you let it go down fairly slow to get it down. One time we had a call to go over in Mindanao Island. On the top of Mindanao Island, there's a long peninsula that goes out about a mile. And the Army was on one end of it, firing at the Japanese who were on the other end of that peninsula. But somehow or other, a bunch of Seabees got put in the middle of there to build a PT base. But they were getting shells falling on them and everything. So they called on the radio and said to go get them out of there. So we went up there on the thing, and of course I'm in there letting the ramp down, And all of a sudden, Stanley's yelling at me, bring it back up, bring it back up. I said, what's the matter with him? So then I got out and I climbed up the ladder on the side of the bow to see there's a torpedo in the mud down below where we were putting the thing. We almost landed it.
Disaster averted, I guess.
We almost landed on top of it. Yeah.
So you served in the Philippines area.
I was in the Philippines.
And I understand that through a little bit of research that you served on an amphibious vessel.
Yep.
But they didn't have amphibious vessels at the beginning of World War II.
No.
So you had to make one.
Yeah, that's
so tell
right.
me a little bit how do you make an amphibious vessel?
Well, I don't know how they made them all in the machine shop, and then they put them all. Well, like I say, we put all the sections together in the water wherever they happened to drop them. This one here that we were on, they dropped it over in the New Hebrides. It was on top of a LST. It came out of New York's harbor, and then we went from there. From New York Harbor, we went to Cuba first. We stopped in Cuba first, Guantanamo, and then we went to Panama, and we had to wait to go through we had to wait about 3 days before we could go through the Panama Canal. And then after we got through that, first stop was we went over to New Hebrides, and that's where a crane took the 3 sections of the ballast off of the top of the LST and put them in the water, and then we had to get ropes and tie them together as the 3 different sections, tie them together as tight as we could get them. Then we had 2 guys on each side with bolts, long bolt, a nut, and 2 washers. Then you would jump off of the ship and you go down underneath. One guy put the bolt through the flanges. On each piece they had a flange that hung down below the ship, and he had to put the bolt through. And then the other guy would put the washers on and the nut, and we tied them up as tight as you could get them. But the first time you did that, you had to go back up and breathe for maybe 5 or 6 minutes, and then go back down and tighten the bolt up more. And then you had to go get more air. Then you went back down with a wrench. Each guy had a wrench. And then you tried to tighten it up, but you couldn't tighten it up standing there, so you had to put your feet up on the bottom of the ship in order to have pressure to tighten up the nut. Well, we did that, and there was, I believe, 8 bolts across the length of the ship. 8 bolts in 2 different sections we had to do to get it all bolted together.
So let me tell you, I guess the Navy's come a long way, because here you had just a floating boat, and then you put 3 other pieces of boats together, and you jump in the water holding your breath, and you're attaching all 3 sections together to make the finished product.
That's right. We just had to make sure we had it good and tight, because we were going to sail on it.
When I interviewed a submariner one day, he said that it's all about the boat, because if the boat goes, everybody goes.
That's right.
It's all about the bolts too, I guess, for you guys. If you don't tighten those bolts and make sure that they're tight, if you're out to sea, falls apart, you're...
Yeah, that was the funny part about it. You think that you got the bolt stick on the nut sticking there through, you can go tighten it right up. Can't do that. You're standing in water. All you got to do is go, you don't do nothing but move down in the water.
You have to go
so
upside
then you
down.
got to double up and put your feet on the bottom of the boat, and then you got the pressure and you can pull the boat. Yeah.
I shared with you off camera I said that one of the job qualifications, who could hold their breath the longest, I guess.
Oh, that's right, yeah.
And so what was besides doing the opening and closing of the ramp, what other services did you do on the ship?
One of the other services I had was every morning I had to go down in the engine room and switch the generators over, we had a generator on the port and one on the starboard side, and when they would, the generator would run 24 hours, and then you go down in the morning, and the one that's not running, you start it had a Cummins diesel on it. You start up the Cummins diesel, and you let it warm a little bit. Then you go on the other side of the ship, and each one has got their own electric box. There's a big, huge electric box with a knife switch on, a knife control on it. So you got to go on the other side where the one that's been used for the past 24 hours and shut it off. And once you shut that off, then you have to go back on the other side and switch and hook up the generator with the Cummins diesel and throw the knife switch back on again. So there was a while there, for maybe half a minute, there was no electricity on board the ship, and everybody up there yelling at you and calling your names and stuff.
Sure. What are some of the ports that you went to see when you were at sea? You mentioned Cuba.
Well,
you were
we
there.
went to Cuba, we went to Panama, then we went to Solomon, Islands, and we went to New Hebrides, New Guinea, the Philippines, and then we were going to go to an island called Isabella, but the war ended.
What was that like for you? Were you on a ship when the war ended?
Yeah, I was there.
And what happened? I mean, tell me how you heard, or
we heard it over the radio.
Was it during the mess hall? Was it general announcement?
It was the first thing in the morning. It was first thing in the morning. Just got up in the morning. It came over the radio up on the powerhouse, and that's how we found out about the war ended here.
Do you remember what they said?
They just, I can remember that they come down and said the war's over. It said it will be going home now. That's what it so,
was there a lot of cheering at that point?
Yeah, but there was only 10 of us on board anyway.
Oh, really? It was a small man.
Yeah, well, it was 12 originally, but one of the guys got appendicitis, and then the other guy got, I don't know what he got, but they both left, so we only had 10.
Did you have any armament to protect yourselves out there on your ship?
We had
were you escorted everywhere?
We had a 20-millimeter gun, and then we figured we needed more, so we put a 50 caliber gun on besides. And that's all we had for that. But when we went from the New Hebrides to the Philippines, we were told we had a big cable hooked up on the bow, and we were hooked to a DE, destroyer escort, that was pulling us because we couldn't go the same speed as they could with the flat end.
Sure. That must have been kind of rough.
So
rough sailing, wasn't it? I mean, I can imagine if you got a ship that's pulling you a little bit faster, you're in their wake, but then, or unless you're far enough back, you're picking up all their.
Yeah, we bounced a little bit there.
Probably more than a little.
Yeah, a little bouncing around in there. But like you said, we had we had tornado over there, and that's where we really got bounced around. But that was when I looked out the hatchway, which is waterproof, which I had up my nose here. I wanted to see what's going on, so I opened up one of the hatchways and I looked, and I see the water was 20 feet above the ship.
Wow!
And then all of a sudden, boom, we're on the top. Then we're on the bottom. Then we're on the top. That's the way to go for a whole. Oh, I don't know how long that did. That was pretty good.
Nowadays, I know on the pleasure cruise, I toured the up in the bridge, and they have such sophisticated electronics to measure where storms are, and they just go around the storms with today's technology.
Yeah, they know where they are ahead of time.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
One of the things we like to do is we like to offer the veterans an opportunity to pass on a message to other veterans or people that are currently serving in our military all across the world. And I want to give you that opportunity today. If you want to share a message about your experience in the Navy or a message out to them that are still providing us with our liberties and our freedoms, the floor is yours.
I want them all to keep their upper lip keep it up and stay strong, because you'll get out of it in the end and be coming home one someday. That's about the way it goes. You just got to wait for the time to go by, that's all.
That's great. And, you know, I want to thank you and congratulate you, Warren, for your service. And I actually have a little citation here I wanted to give to you. And it says, State of Connecticut official statement on behalf of the 8th Senate District. I, Kevin Witkos, State Senator, take great pleasure in recognizing Warren F. Sullivan being named the April 2015 Veteran of the Month, an honor that recognizes Warren F. Sullivan's incredible dedication to his country and brave service in World War II. I just want to give you that and say thank you very much again.
Yeah, thank you very much for one thing that we did that I didn't tell you about, which I think was one of the best things we did all the time we were over there. We got a call on the radio. It said there was a Filipino fellow that joined the Navy, and he lived way up 12 miles up the Cotabato River in the jungle. And he joined the Navy. They sent him to school to learn to read maps and operate the radio. And he used to, from his home up in the woods, up in the jungle, he would go around and find out where the Japanese were. Then he'd send a message back to the flagship and tell them where the Japanese were. And every morning I would see a Corsair and a Lightning take off from there and go over the jungle. And I often wondered how come. And then I found out this guy was telling them of where the Japanese were at, and they were going over and bombing them.
He'd do a recon, yeah.
And so now he called back because the Japanese were looking for him. So then they wanted somebody to go and volunteer to go and get him out of there. So we volunteered to go up the Cotabato River. We had to go up 12 miles up the river through the jungle, and we finally made it up there. And we picked him up. He had a wife and 2 daughters and him, and we picked him up and we brought him back down. Now I figured we're going to have a lot of trouble going up there. We didn't get shot at all going up there. And the only reason I think we didn't was because we had the 20 millimeter and the 50 millimeter, and we could have really blasted them if anybody shot them. Yeah. They didn't, but
don't mess with the U.S. Navy.
But we seen a lot going up. The screws were bringing a lot of dead bodies, a lot of dead Japanese up from the bottom, and they were popping up on the top of the water as the ship screws went up. They would come up from the side. The only other thing that we bothered was the buffaloes, the water buffaloes, were mad at us because we were making a lot of noise, and they're coming up and yelling at us. Yeah. Otherwise,
don't mess with the U.S. Navy. Warren Sullivan, motor machinist, 3rd class. Thank you, sir. It's been an honor and a pleasure. See you next month on Senator Witkos' Veterans Corner.
Yeah, very good. Thank you.